Okay, I think we can start. There are 7 participants. Good evening, all of you. Hope you all can hear me.
Good evening, madam.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Then, right. So it's our second session under pedagogical psychology. Yesterday, we did the introduction to the module pedagogical psychology, and we discussed about the nature and scope of psychology. So they were the main areas. And finally, we discussed about the importance of educational psychology for teachers. Why teachers need to have an understanding about educational psychology and different contribution to practice of education and different contributions of uh, theory of education. Under those 2 topics, we discussed about the importance of psychology for teachers, knowledge of educational psychology for teachers. So the second session, here we are going to discuss about the different schools or um, theories of psychology and their contributions to education systems. So psychology, it's a subject that has evolved through a century, time of a century, up to this situation or up to the standard now we practice. Therefore, lot of psychologists and educationists have contributed to this development of subject psychology, especially for educational psychology. Lot of educationists also have contributed to a certain extent. So these people have introduced different theories on psychology, different subject areas, different practices, right? So these schools, so we are going to discuss about these different schools or different theories of psychology and how they have contributed to the education system throughout the time. That is the main area of today's lesson. So psychology, mm, it is a subject area that has been influenced by number of disciplines, right? Disciplines or theories, so, right? Psychology, actually, it's an independent field of study, right? And it has emerged recently. So, uh, for a teacher to have an adequate knowledge about uh, developments of psychology is very much essential to understand the behavior patterns of students, right? So group of psychologists having similar point of view and making similar approaches to study the human mind or behavior constitutes a school of thought in psychology, right? These subjects, unlike the scientific subjects, we can't it's not tangible, right? Psychology is something that is developed through the thoughts, right? Through observations, these psychologists have uh, formed some theories regarding the behavior and the connection or relationship between the mind and the behavior patterns that is visible or uh, by the students or people, right? So group of psychologists who are having a similar point of views and making similar approaches to study the human mind or behavior, they come together and they constitute a school of thought in psychology. That's how a school is created, right? A cluster, a group, that means. So there are several schools of psychology and each has developed some systems of ideas which not only influence the development of various trends and approaches for the study of behavior, but also affected the process and product of education. So, lot of influence, impact of these uh, psychological thoughts uh, can be seen in education systems and the development of the subject education. In earlier times, at the beginning of the 20th century, right, the formal school systems were emerging everywhere all over the world, right? Uh, and the rapid development of education, providing education to the younger generation came into existence after this industrial revolution, in the world history, right? So with those rapid changes in education system, but earlier times, people were concerned mainly about imparting knowledge, pure knowledge into the child's mind. They thought, uh, they looked at the child or the student as an empty vessel, and they thought education or knowledge can be poured into the mind or brain of the child. But nowadays, that perspective is different. The approach to the student learning is different now. It's mostly student centered. You all know that, right? So, uh, for those changes to happen in the education system, knowledge about the psychology, especially the knowledge about the child's mind and their behavior patterns, the relationship between the mind and the behavior, right? They have contributed a lot to make some differences or changes or development in education system. That's the introduction we can give uh, to this topic. So various trends and approaches uh, for the study of behavior has been a very influencing matter in education system, and that happened because of the development of knowledge in educational psychology. So let's see what are these schools, right? Maybe definitely you must have heard about these words before. I I think it's not new to you at all. So structuralism, uh, or experimental psychology, or functionalism, behaviorism, psychoanalysis, constructivism, and Gestalt theory. Those are the mainly concerned schools of psychology we uh, we we include in study of educational psychology nowadays. There have been some other schools also, but these are the major areas that we have to have an understanding knowledge about uh, in the study of educational psychology. So, from one by one, we'll have a look at them. So, if we put that in an illustration, the schools of thought of in psychology, right? Now, through that illustration, you can have a better idea. I mean, kind of an uh, idea what these different types of schools are mainly concerned with, right? So, psychoanalysis, it's from the word itself, you can get the idea. It's something regarded with the cognitivism. I mean, the uh, brain or analytical power of a person. Behaviorism, see, observing the behavior of people or animals, we come into certain conclusions about psychology. Then humanism, right? Uh, Humanity, the love and the care for humanity is included in it. Then cognitivism, mainly concerned or related with the brain functions. Structuralism, different structures. See how different types of structures are formed and their thoughts. The structuralism, the psychologists who introduced structuralism, they looked at things in structured forms. And then Gestalt theory, it's something totally different. So let's see, look at them. Functionalism, functioning of the brain and thing. Right? We'll come back to this illustration once we have gone through all the schools of psychology, and then it will be easy for you to understand better. So, experimental psychology and experimentalist psychologists, right? Uh, the psychologists who are associated with structuralism or this experimental psychology are the mainly concerned names are there are many mainly concerned names are Wilhelm Wundt and this is not ND, it's and Wilhelm Wundt and Edward Titchener, right? Most of them are German people because actually psychology, a lot of German, the psychologists of German nationality have contributed a lot for the development of psychology as a subject, right? So they conducted, especially this Titchener, conducted systematic research on the so earlier Wilhelm Wundt had introduced some of the theories regarding this experimental psychology, or we call it structuralism also. And Titchener later conducted lot of systematic research on uh, theories which Wundt had created. And he believed that the science of psychology deals only with things as they are found to exist, right? Structuralism is widely regarded as the first school of thought in psychology. So it happened somewhere in 18 uh, 1870 to 1910. That was the time period which these people, these psychologists, lived in the world. Right? So it is regarded as the first school of thought in psychology. And this outlook focused on breaking down mental process into the most basic components. Right? Uh, they say that main objective of psychology is to study and understand human mind. Right? The focus of structuralism was on reducing mental process down into their most basic elements. Mental process, by that time, neurology also had been identified, and some experiments were happening in neurology area also. And focus of structuralism was on reducing mental process down into the most basic elements. And they used techniques such as introspection to analyze the inner process of human mind. So they discussed about, especially this Titchener, in his own words, he had said, no concrete mental process, no idea of feeling that we actually experience as part of a consciousness is a simple process, right? But that all alike are made of number of really simple processes blended together. These simple processes are called mental elements, right? Basic elements or mental elements. So they are numerous according to his vision. These mental elements are numerous, and they all can be grouped into broad areas, right? As sensations, right? What we feel when we feel sad, right? It's a combination of lot of um, mental elements. That feeling, as an example, if you take, right? Uh, so that is the approach of experimental psychologists or structuralism. So the main contributors for this school of thought are Wilhelm Wundt and Edward Titchener. So educational implications, or this theory of that school of theory on psychology, how it affected education, right? Or the how we could implement that in education process, right? So structuralism, those are the two subtopics we will be continuously talking about when we discuss about the schools. We will introduce the school of thought, and then how that specific school of thought on psychology affected the educational system. Those are the two areas we'll be discussing. So structuralism emphasized the systematic observation of the activities of the learner under controlled learning conditions, right? Uh, Actually, structuralism that's been criticized by the later psychologists, that uh, that was too narrow to embrace all aspects of human behavior, right? They were talking about the smallest mind uh, elements, and that they say that that was too narrow to recognize or to catch all the aspects of human behavior. That's natural because this is the look. Just imagine the times these theories came into practice, right? Very, I mean, no, the technology was very, I mean, at very lower levels, and that was just the beginning. Therefore, that's very natural for it to be narrow. But anyway, they put the foundation, and later uh, their followers, the psychologists, they built up the subject called psychology on that foundation these people had laid. Therefore, it's very useful and valuable. So it is an experiment method for studying human behavior, activities of the mind. That's why we call it experimental psychology also, because experiment was the method they used. So the structuralism actually emerged out of laboratory experiments in Germany. So it gave a careful method of data collection, right? They observation and experimentation were their main methodology to construct this theory, right? It laid stress on the spirit of science and experimentation in treating educational matters. So it initiated the spirit of science in the field of education. That's why that is the importance of a school of experimentation or school that structuralism theory. It has not contributed a lot on education as it is the earliest uh, school of thought we can identify uh, in psychology. It has not contributed a lot for education, but that was a very good foundation they had laid for the subject called psychology to develop on later by the follower psychologists. So that is uh, structuralism or experimental psychology. So let's have a look at the second school of uh, psychology.
Could you show
Functional.
the could you show the
Yeah.
earlier one a little bit?
All right, sure.
Okay, madam.
Right. So then let's move to the second school of thought on psychology, that is functionalism and functionalist psychologists, right? So functionalism is the name given to a system of psychology which studies mind as it functions in adapting the organism to its environment, right? Studies the mind as it functions in adapting the organism to its environment, right? So uh, the actually the roots of this viewpoint that goes back to the uh, evolutionary biologist. You know the name Charles Darwin, right? And he was this biologist who introduced the theory of evolution to the world. He said that the most uh, suitable organism survives and those who cannot uh, match with the situation distinguish. That's a fundamental or the basic idea we can give about his evolution theory, right? So functionalism also formed on the roots of this theory. They say that the one who can bear the challenges that come from nature survives. Survival theory, right? Those who cannot uh, bear up the uh, problems or some will, let's say, environmental conditions, right? Finding food, finding shelter, finding protection from the other animals, like that. They distinguished. They died. That's the main theory Charles Darwin introduced as his theory of evolution, right? So functionalism also has a kind of a connection with that work. So functionalism formed as a reaction to the theories of the structuralist school, right? That's why I said they laid the foundation, and the other uh, psychologists built up the subject on that foundation. So, as a reaction to the theories of the structuralist school of thought, and was heavily influenced by the work of William James, right? He was an American philosopher and a psychologist who lived somewhere in 1890s and early 20th century in America, right? So uh, he was an academic in Harvard University, and he says that mind as it is revealed in habits, knowledge and perception is constantly engaged in active give and take relations with the environment, right? So mind, according to his view, is useful or functional in adjustment. He says that according to the situations that come towards the human being, right? Maybe environmental things, especially they talked about environment at that time because, early, uh, early 20th century, the world started its rapid development after that industrial revolution, machines were being introduced, that the changes were going on, right? Sudden changes happened. The That was the time period where human beings uh, had to face I mean, rapid change, because the world until the beginning of 20th century world changed slowly, right? After the industrial revolution and with the building of these machinery and industry for the industries, the physical world began to change rapidly, and sometimes human beings found it difficult to cope with it. Now even at present times also we see that difference. World is changing rapidly with the advancement of this technology, especially these uh, online resources, right? So nowadays we are also facing, kind of a um, uh, disturbance is there for us, don't you think? We feel that we don't have personal lives, no privacy. We are exposed to the whole world through these online um resources, right? Like that. So at that time also something like that happened. Therefore, they said that mind is useful or functional in adjustment. That was their main idea when they discussed about when they introduced the theory of functionalism, right? He emphasized that that great things in all education is to make the nervous system our ally instead of our enemy. So once again, William James said was that mind can be used to function to adjust to the situations that come. So it functioned on the mind's functions and adaptions. Right? That's what we do. That's what we say that functioning adjusting is adapting to the situation. Okay? Unlike some of the other well-known schools of thought in psychology, functionalism is not associated with a single dominant theorist. Right? So there are many, mainly influenced by the work of William James, but some different functionalist thinkers associated with this uh, functionalism theory. They are John Dewey. I think he's a well-known educationist, psychologist. You must have come through this name several times during your academic journey. And James Rowland Angel, and Harvey Carr. These are also some well-known names in education field, right? So they all of them are functionalist thinkers. So John Dewey, he uh, he his life, his long life, right? Through his long life, he contributed a lot to the development of education field, right? He was a great philosopher, an educator, and a psychologist, and he developed. He was very much interested in psychology, right? Uh, So according to his philosophy, Dewey says that social change is an inevitable thing and capable of being directed for man's benefit. So social changes happened, as I described earlier also at the beginning of the 20th century with the rapid advancement of industrial uh, mechanisms, right? Social changes happened. Earlier, there was aristocratic set of people. They were the rich people, wealthy people. But with the advancement in industries, people from lower classes also, they became the new wealthy generation set of people. And with those things, the traditional contemporary society actually broke down to a certain extent, and new culture emerged. So that big social change made lot of mental disorders or affected the mentality of lot of people. That's why this practice came into existence, and John Dewey said that plans for action that help the individuals uh, to solve problems of living and adjustment, because people had to adjust to these new situations, right? So uh, in his he believed he said that uh, study of the organism as a whole functioning in its environment was the proper subject matter for psychology. Right? So Dewey became world famous as an uh, exponent of the pragmatic viewpoint in philosophy. So he's we learn about him as a philosopher also, right? Under education philosophy, that subject we discuss about John Dewey in detail. And here also, as a psychologist, also we have some kind of he has some kind of a contribution in the field. So that is functionalism and functionalist psychologists. So their contribution to education, the theory of functionalism contributed a lot to education, unlike the structuralism, right? Because now this school of thought, the second one, the functionalism thought of school of thought on philosophy, they dealt with the education systems also, especially John Dewey, right? So they had a big contribution. So they said functionalism stresses that behavior is adaptable to new situation on life. People can adjust to new situations through behavior by changing the behavior patterns, right? Now, especially as an example, if you say at that time, I said that the dress of people, human beings, especially ladies, right? Earlier, they, even the American ladies, they wore high neck, uh, long sleeved, uh, long frocks or dresses, right? That rapidly changed into a mini type of a dress with the advancement of industrial mechanisms, right? As an example, I say. So people had to adjust to that situation. That's just one example, right? With the social changes, with the changes in the uh, strong or influential people in the society. Earlier, influential people were the aristocratic part of the society. But later, new uh, traders and wealthy set of people emerged, and therefore, behavior of people had to be changed. Otherwise, they could not survive. They could not survive with the, keeping all the earlier traditions. They could not survive actually in that world. So they had to change, they had to adapt uh, through the behavior patterns to this new situation of life. So accordingly, the teachers and the principal should provide such an environment to the students for learning as is conducive to arouse and sustain their motivation in learning. So these the practices of this theory still can be implemented in our systems, right? Behavior, adapting to situations through behavior. So functionalism tended to replace theoretically overloaded curriculum by practical approaches, right? So John Dewey had a very big influence in this, right? When we talk about him as a philosopher of education, right? He has contributed a lot in this manner. He has written a lot of articles, books, right? The reflects of a lot of reflective journals, right? So they influenced a lot, and education systems earlier the teachers, as I said earlier, they thought that students are just like empty vessels, and they poured the education from outside, and they thought that students could retain everything, and that was the only methodology they used. So definitely, naturally, the curriculum at that time was theoretically overloaded. A lot of what do you say that by hearting a lot of theories or things was compulsory, right? But with the contribution of functionalism to education, curriculums were changed more into practical approaches. That's the very great change that happened, right? But instead of by hearting the hundreds and thousands of books, students were uh, encouraged to uh, involve in practical approaches in education, right? Learning by doing was given a central place in the methods of teaching and learning. Learning by doing. Until recent times, this term existed. Still, we talk about it. Learning by doing, practical approach. Not merely learning the theory, right? With the theory, how we can put the theory into practice was introduced because of this functionalism to education, right? So functionalism emphasized the study of the various problems of the individual and their solutions. And it contributed a lot to child psychology and mental testing. Earlier, mentality of the child was actually not at all concerned. If you read books of earlier times, there was a uh, restriction for the children to talk unless they were talked to, right? They said that children are a set of people who should see things but not talk, right? Even in their during their meal times, uh, they could talk only if the adults talk to them. Otherwise, they were not allowed to talk, even to ask for more food, even. If you read the books of Charles Dickens, uh, Thomas Hardy, those days, when they write about children, these things are mentioned. So their mentality, that was not at all concerned at that time, right? So functionalism, John Dewey and his theory of functionalism and their theory of functionalism contributed a lot to child psychology. That is actually the beginning of child psychology. To think about the mindset of children, how their behaviors can be changed by dealing with their thinking pattern, right? And mental testing. So it pointed out the importance to understand the needs of children at different age levels, right? Children have different needs. Earlier, they were not at all concerned. They thought children are just feeding the children and supporting them with the necessary food and clothing and protection, some roof on top of the head is enough for children to grow up, right? But with these theories, they try to understand and point out the importance to understand the needs of children at different age levels, right? So that they were very big advancements towards children and education, right? So it stressed the aspect of utility. In other words, it indicated that Only those subjects should be included in the curriculum which were useful in society. Earlier, learning Latin, translating Latin verses into English or some other subject, and by hearting long verses of Greek and Roman history and culture, right? They were compulsory in education. If they were not aware about those things, they were considered to be uneducated actually. So, because of the impact of functionalism in education, right? They stressed on the aspect of utility. That is, you must learn something that can be used, that is useful in uh, when you live in the society, what you have learned must be, should be used to find your employment. Otherwise, that education is useless. By hearting things, remembering lot of words, years, numbers, they won't they won't help you uh, to find your living, right? So that was the time this idea came into existence. So they said that subjects should be included in the curriculum which were useful in society. So it led to the development of scientific inquiry in education. A big step took towards scientific inquiry or scientific development in education, because children started to think when they were exposed to science, and that helped a lot for the development of the world also, industrial development of the world. It initiated new methods of teaching and new methods of teaching and learning. With with these changes in the curriculum, definitely the teaching methods had to be changed. More practicalism had to be included in the teaching learning process. Children were exposed to new things. They were encouraged to invent new things, right? And they were supported with the necessary resources, materials, instructions. Right? So they were very big changes in the education system. So functionalism contributed a lot to education. Right. Then the third school of psychology, behaviorism and behavioristic psychologists. Behaviorism. Um, Another word that is, I'm sure that is not new to you. Give me just 1 minute. Right. Behaviorism and behavioristic psychologists. So John B. Watson, Ivan Pavlov, right? They are the pioneer names that comes into our mind when we discuss about behaviorism, right? Mm, so Watson also. was an American psychologist, right? He believed that concepts like mind consciousness and image, they have no place. He said that psychology was the science of behavior, right? He, according to him, behavioral acts are to be described objectively, right? In terms of stimulus and response, right? So he said that behavioral research, he proposed them, observation and and without instrumental control and conditioning reflex method and verbal report method and testing methods, they were uh, those were the those were his proposals. Behaviorism became a dominant school of thought during the 1950s. Right now, you can see the gradual evolution of psychology theories. So we started somewhere in 1870s with the structuralism. Now the third school that emerged during the time of 1950s. It was based upon the work of thinkers such as John B. Watson, Ivan Pavlov. So behaviorism suggests that all behavior can be explained by environmental causes rather than by internal forces. Right? He says behaviorism is focused on observational behavior. By observing different behaviors of human beings and even animals, he says, right? For his experiments, he had used animals also. When you read about him more later, you will be able to identify those things, right? Mm. Um, that behaviors, bad behaviors or good behaviors, right? Positive uh, behaviors, negative behaviors, whatever, right? They can be explained by uh, environmental causes rather than by internal forces. Now, he says that mind, mind is not a prominent. It doesn't take a prominent place because of the environmental situations. Behaviors can be changed or should be changed. Watson discarded mentalistic educational psychology concepts such as consciousness and mind. Right? He did not believe in mentalistic educational psychology like consciousness and mind, and he proposed the following methods for behavioral researchers. Right? Observation with and without instrumental control. By observing children or observing people, we can identify the causes for behavioral changes, he said. And we can remedy by changing environmental factors. We can change the behavior of people, he said. That kind of an idea like that he introduced. And conditioning reflex method, right? Different conditions, changed conditions also affect the behavior of people. And verbal report method, we can ask questions, questionnaires can be given, interviews can be used to identify different behavioral, the reasons for different behaviors, right? Verbal report method. Then testing methods, different testings, right? By giving questionnaires or giving different writing, written tests. Right? Still, we can, if you search in the internet, you can find lot of testing tools to identify your different learning styles, or to identify who you are. You can personality traits, right? Like that. Testing methods are existing. So John Watson was the pioneer to create these type of things to understand behavior of the people, and to change their behaviors. He said that environmental conditions can be changed. So behaviorism also contributed a lot to education. Let's see how. Behaviorism has given new methods and techniques of understanding the child behavior. Behavior is observable, We see how the child behaves, especially with children. They are honest. Children are usually, especially the younger ones, they are honest. They don't try to hide anything from their behavior. We can observe, we can see that whether the child is happy or unhappy, right? Whether he is satisfied or unsatisfied, whether he is in pain or whether he is in good health, also can be, all those things can be observed by his behavior, right? So uh, it has contributed to the understanding of the emotions of the child, right? Behaviorism explains that certain behaviors of children happens because of the emotions. That's correct. I think with our understanding also, in generally, we can, even though we are not psychologists, we can understand that emotions are a main reason for certain behaviors of children, right? And when they get angry, their behaviors change. Even the facial expressions change. Behaviors change. They hit other people, push, right? So when they are happy, that's also visible through his behavior. The smiling face, the relaxed body, right? Um, and the relationship, the way they build up relationships with the others, with his peers, right? When he feels unprotected or scared, then his behavior changes, right? He doesn't talk, right? Always try to be isolated from the others, very reluctant to build up relationships, right? That their behaviors uh, can be directly related with their emotions, right? So it has given new methodology of teaching known as programmed learning, which has been successfully employed in several countries. Programmed learning. So the lessons are, or the learning process is pre-programmed, kind of, right? Uh, so even lesson planning nowadays, right? It is also a kind of a program. So we have a tight syllabus, curriculum, and a syllabus in it. And for each day, we know what we are going to teach the children, right? We prepare every minute, we prepare for the lesson, right? Kind of programmed learning. So this term program learning is something a little bit different from that. Just as an example, you can take it. So it points out that all behavior is learned in the process of interaction with environment. So according to behaviorism, all behavior is learned in the process of interaction with environment. Right? Environment means not only the this trees and flowers and animals and what we see around us. Environment doesn't mean only that, even the people in it, right? So interaction with people also, right? If the child is treated badly by the family, then naturally his behavior uh, reflects that bad treatment, right? So all behavior is learned in the process of interaction with environment. And it emphasizes the importance of environment and its impact on human growth, right? So physical environment, mental environment, emotional environment, everything, right? It has a big impact on human growth, right? If the environment is positive or happy, well protected, right? Then naturally the impact on growth of the child will be positive. He will grow up to be a mentally balanced, right? Productive, healthy, nice man. But if the environment is unhealthy for the child, if he comes from a economically, uh, let's say, a family with low economic level, and right, if the parents are right, the child is not well protected or fed well, or he is not treated for his illnesses, then naturally he will grow up to be a man with low qualities. Right? So it emphasizes this behaviorism emphasizes the importance of environment and its impact on human growth. And it has led to the development of new approaches, methods, and techniques of dealing with maladjustment in children. Maladjustments, right? There are some children who are very aggressive, right? They they have no patience at all. They hit and disturb others, and I mean very aggressive behavior can be seen. So the reason for that can be the bad uh, family environment. Most probably, it can be a reason. There are some diseases also, the hyperactive children are different from them. Hyperactiveness is something that is concerned, connected with the biological level of the child, hormone changes and things, right? It's not hyperactiveness. I'm talking about those generally normal children who behave very aggressively. Maybe the reason may be the bad family background. So to help this type of children, the children with maladjustments, right? So just an example I was giving, there are many other maladjustments, right? Some slow learners, right? Slow learning also is a problem with children. They can't, the concept, the understanding of concepts or retaining them in mind is slow in some children. So for all these defaults, we can help these children with the behaviorism theory, right? Lot of new approaches are introduced and new methods are used and techniques even in our teaching learning process, we use them. Sometimes in principles of education and methodology of education, you have already learned and you are already using them in your teaching learning process. So it has brought psychology out from the controversy of mentalistic approach to human behavior. Right. So earlier with the structuralism and functionalism, lot of mentalistic approach was there. They were, observation and experimenting with the human mind uh, was their main approach. But through behaviorism, the main approach of the psychological school was human behavior. It has greatly contributed to the psychology of learning, right? Behaviorism, the practices of behaviorism, we still implement in our education process, right? It has indicated the importance of motivation. Most of the motivational theories we use nowadays has been derived from behaviorism theories, right? Simply, very simple thing we use to motivate children, clapping hands when they do something good, right? So even that changes, or that is regarded with, connected with behaviors, right? Whenever he does a good thing, we appreciate them, even through a tap on the head, right? So motivation theories, most of them rely upon behaviorism theories, right? So that is the third one. So let's move to the next school of psychology. Psychoanalysis school and psychoanalysts. Psychoanalysis. From the term itself, you get an idea about it, right? The main psychologist who is concerned with psychoanalysis theory is Sigmund Freud, a very well known in the field of psychology, in education also. Sigmund Freud. He was a neurologist. Uh, Initially, he was a neurologist, an Austrian neurologist. He also lived somewhere between 1950s to 1815 to 1940s, right? Uh, Freud studied about the technique of hypnotherapy, and found that its scope was limited, and in several cases, the cure was superficial, right? Hypnotherapy, it's not a new word to us now. So, mm, he Freud recognized the real value of psychology lays with the physique analysis or an influence of the unconscious mind on behavior, right? Influence of the unconscious mind on behavior, how behavior is changed with the unconscious mind. Freud believed that the human mind was composed of three elements: id, ego, and superego. These three elements, I think you all have heard about them even earlier. So in coming lessons also we'll be discussing about certain things. Now this is just an introduction to school of psychoanalysis. In when we go through the module, we'll come across these things again. Right? So he said the id consists of primal urges, right? So Freud actually developed the division of personality into id, ego, and superego, right? Human mind, how it affects. He emphasized the importance of unconsciousness in mental life, right? Id is according to him, consists of primal urges. Ego is the component of personality charged with dealing with reality, right? Like a dream, like in a dream. Consider the dream a main route into the unconscious process of human mind, unconsciously, right? And superego is the part of the personality that holds all the ideals and values we internalize from our parents and culture. Now, as is in an example, right? Now, we are taught that taking some other person's belongings without permission is bad, right? From our early childhood, from all through in all cultures, that is the thievery or stealing from other people is regarded as a bad thing, right? So that is internalized in our mind, right? That internal mind, superego part. යටිහිත කියලා අපි කියන්නේ, right? So it's an internalized value or idea, right? But still, at certain situations, when dealing with the reality, right, people tend to, right now, justify certain, let's say stealing actually, they justify. That is the, with the reality, they think, it's a small
Excuse me,
thing.
madam.
Yes.
Could you explain briefly? We also learned, but ID, ego, and superego. Directly, you come to the point regarding ID. What is ID? You mean by?
No. I'm coming from that. The that's right. Now I said I'm coming from
Really,
super ego to
I
ego
forgot
and
that
I.
for a long time. I forgot
Uh,
that. Yes, just I asked you.
right here. Now look at this. I was describing superego. Superego is the part of personality that holds all the ideals and values we internalize from our parents and cultures. That's why I took the example that stealing, we know that it is a bad thing. Through our culture, from our religion, all the human beings are taught from the very early childhood, right? that ideal, that value is given that stealing is a bad thing. So that is the super ego part of our mind, unconscious mind, right? Unconsciously, we know that it is a bad thing, right? So that is the super ego part of our mind. Then ego is the ego. Now look at this. Ego is the component of personality charged with dealing with the reality. Unconsciously, we know that stealing is bad, but when dealing with reality, right? When we work, when we in our real life situations, sometimes people tend to steal, right? Although he knows that it is a bad thing, in his innermost mind, in the superego part of his mind, he knows it's bad, but still he justifies his behavior by just thinking like, just it's a small thing, nobody will know, right? Uh, uh, this is actually, I need this thing actually, therefore it's not a bad thing, right? Like that, we justify things and um, not us, right? People steal when they deal with this reality. And id consists of primal urge. The primal urge is the need to steal. Don't know. Uh, when we see something, if we really need that, let's say we see 1,000 rupees note, someone has kept it on the table and he has forgotten it, right? From the innermost mind, we know that 1,000 rupee note does not belong to us, and taking it is bad. It's the values in our mind, in that superego part of it, knows that it's bad to take it. But we have an urge, that id part, our uppermost mind. When we suddenly see it, that 1,000 rupee note left on the table without, now there's no one around, and the reality is that we get a feeling, tend, we tend to take that 1,000 rupee and put that in our pocket, right? So that is a very simple example I can give you about the three states of mind, right? The unconscious mind, which Freud has described in his theory. It's a big area, just an introduction I'm giving you. If you are interested in it, you can read more about Freud's theory uh, even now, right? Even before coming to our lessons, you can uh, get a further understanding about that. Then Freud believed that the interaction of these three elements was what led to all of the complex human behaviors. Human behaviors are very complex, right? We can't recognize the mindset of person just by observing him outside. Sometimes there are people who look very clean, neat, uh, and generally at once, at an instance, we feel that they are very good people, but actually their behaviors are really complex, right? Outwardly, those who behave very nicely might be demons in their personal lives, right? Mm, so interaction of these three elements was what led to all of the complex human behaviors, right? Freud's school of thought was enormously influential, but also generated considerable debates. Still, Freud's uh, concepts are used in psychology a lot because, we call Sigmund Freud as the father of psychology also. But considerable debate still goes on with his findings, right? Even ego, superego concept also being controversial nowadays. That is being debated about. Changes have happened, right? This controversy existed not only in his time but also in modern discussions of Freud's theory, right? So, analysis, psychoanalysis, the analysis of the mind, unconscious mind, was the base of psychoanalysis school and those theories. So, psychoanalysis theory also contributed a lot to education. So, psychoanalysis has brought out the need for early childhood education, right? Uh, Earlier, even in Sri Lanka also, some in the 1950s and 60s, even children were admitted to school when they were 7 years old, right? Uh, they were they thought that child must be matured enough to learn things, but nowadays we know that early childhood, that is from age 2 to 5, that is the early childhood period of a child. From age 2 onwards, right, they can be educated. Even languages. Earlier, the concept was child must be taught or child must be learned, taught in his mother tongue at his, during his early childhood days. But now things have changed. They have identified that children are capable of learning more than 3 or 4 languages at a time when during their early childhood times. We thought only mother tongue can be taught, but now it's different, right? They can catch concepts of different languages and learn vocabulary and use them in practical situations at very early times of their life. So, need of early childhood education was brought out by psychoanalysis because they said that children are capable of uh, learning. Their mind are capable of perceiving these difficult concepts. Freud emphasized that unconscious motivation plays an important role in the process of learning, right? Motivation for learning. And then they emphasize uh, the importance of the experiences of early childhood in the process of learning and education, right? With their intervention, actually, early childhood centers, like nurseries, Montessori's, and right, institutions for early childhood education emerged. And those experiences of early childhood is very important in process of learning and education. These early experiences play an important role in laying down the foundation of the personality of the child, right? Uh, Personality of the child to be confident in the society, to be productive in the society. Those early experiences are very important, right? Even with the students in our classroom, we can observe this, right? Children coming from better family backgrounds, their education also, right? If they are not affected by any illness, right? Their education is also considerably good. Their education levels are, achievement levels are considerably good, right? So the early experiences, they have a good impact on the personality of the child. So among the major factors leading to development of positive attitudes in the child towards life are affection, love, and sympathy. Right? If we can develop these positive attitudes in child, that will help him to lead a better life in his adulthood days. Right? If he can feel the affection of people, right? If he can love others, and if he can sympathize with others, understand the situation of others, right? If he has the empathy for other people's uh, difficulties, right? So they are uh, positive attitudes that creates a child with, or a person with, a good personality. Psychoanalysis states that children should get opportunities to express their emotions freely in and outside the class. They say that their emotions must be freely released, even if their anger, even the anger of the child he must be able to release that anger without suppressing it. Suppressing the emotions, uh, right, unconsciously affect badly to the child's personality. So they emphasize on this actually, that emotions must be freely expressed. This is very conducive to the healthy development of children. So all these ideas are included in our education system nowadays. In certain areas, these ideas are used when forming the curriculum or the syllabus, or when uh, introducing different methodology of teaching learning, and when using certain visual aids, when using different methods or implementing things in the classroom, we use these things, these ideas, right? Psychoanalysis throws a lot of light on the causes leading to maladjustments in children, right? Especially the counselors, psychologists who deal with the uh, child's, even in our schools, we have a general idea about psychology, education psychology. Therefore, we use that in our education, in our teaching learning process. But, and teachers can actually, teacher is the best person who can identify any kind of a mental disorder or any maladjustment or any problem, uh, psychological problem in a child. And actually, we don't have that clinical knowledge to treat any psychological effect of a child. We don't have that clinical knowledge. So we have to send him to a suitable professional for that. Maybe a counselor, school counselor, or a clinical counselor. Or so counselors can handle a lot of situations, and they use these theories, psychoanalysis theories, to deal with the child's problem, right? There are some cases even counselors cannot handle, and so then the child can be referred to a professional psychologist, a medical professional in that field, right? So, and there are a lot of treatments, and for all those treatments, to adjust these malpractices of the child, right? Psychoanalysis theories also are still being implemented. Some kind of developments are done for Freud's theories, but still the basis of them are still used. Then psychoanalysis appeals to the teachers to be positive in their outlook, right? Whenever some bad behavior or maladjustment of a child is visible, right? Teachers, they they have to keep up or set up their mind to support the child without penalizing him, right? That's a very important part. The teacher must be positive in these things. If the teacher's feelings or behaviors are negative, then the child is actually ruined. Therefore, teachers definitely should have a good understanding about these different theories, especially psychoanalysis appeals to the teachers to be positive in their outlook. Right. Then, constructivism. Constructivism is that's a basic theory, and that elaborates on how knowledge is built or constructed when new information pours in and comes in contact with the already existing knowledge bank, right, which has been developed in the course of time by various researchers. So, constructing knowledge, right, that's what we do in our education system. We provide them with experiences, and um, further experiences are built upon the previous experience. That's what education is, constructing knowledge, right? Constructivism finds its roots in cognitive psychology as well as human biology, right? Uh, it is an approach which emphasizes the various methods followed in creation of knowledge and that finds adaptability in the changing education scenario, right? Constructivism finds implications in the theory of instruction, discovery, hands-on, experimental, project-based and task-based learning process, and collaborative, a number of applications that base teaching and learning on constructivism, right? Nowadays, we talk about all these areas, right? Constructing knowledge, right? That's more practical approach to education, right? Child is encouraged to construct knowledge through project-based learning, task-based learning processes, experiential learning processes, involving in hands-on activities through discovery of knowledge, right? So, constructivists teaching strategies based on the assumption that learners learn best when they gain knowledge through exploration and active learning. Exploration and active learning. In place of textbooks, hands-on materials are utilized and the learners are motivated to think and reason. Right now, even the reforms that are being introduced into our curriculum also is based on this, right? So the modules are actually hands-on materials, right? Children, the modules, instead of the textbooks, now from grade 6 onwards, children will be given a module, to be completed within a given time frame. So that is a hands-on material, actually, right? And the students are motivated to think and reason. I mean, when he does activities in the module, it's something different from doing activities in a textbook. If you have gone through the uh, trainings, teacher trainings on reforms, you might remember that these things were taught to you. So educators focus on building relations between facts and promoting new understanding in students, right? They give the facts, teachers give the facts, and they encourage students to promote new understanding in using the facts given. Actually, the module-based learning is like that, right? Constructivism calls for the elimination of grades and standardized testing, right? They are not provided with standardized testing. Actually, uh, grading students according to measurements of their achievement is not appreciated by constructivism. Theory of constructivism suggests that assessment becomes a part of the learning process with the intention that learners can play a bigger role in evaluating their own growth. So, uh, kind of formative assessment is appreciated or included in constructivism, right? That is merely for the child to understand uh, in his level of learning, and that can be used as a motivation for the learner to play or to be more uh, active in his learning process by evaluating his own growth, right? So he has the responsibility of his learning in according to constructivism theories. And the last theory of psychology school is Gestalt theory of learning. Gestalt. It's a German word. A German word uh, which means in English form or pattern or configuration, right? Kind of a pattern, a kind of a form of learning is described through this Gestalt theory. The word Gestalt means form or pattern or configuration. Famous psychologist Max Wertheimer has explained that term Gestalt as the whole being greater than the parts. In this Gestalt theory of learning, they admire the whole being, right? They believe in developing as a whole, not as different parts like in Freud's, right? The first principle of Gestalt psychology is that it is the whole which determines the behavior of its parts, right? A little difficult, I mean, with this small introduction, but that's an interesting theory of learning. If you need further understanding, there are a lot of material which you can read to get a better understanding of it, right? An individual perceives the things as whole, not as mere collection of its constituents or elements. So they say that learning takes place, or children learn things as a bulk or as a whole, not as parts of it. learning situation is more than the elements of which its part is composed, right? So they place great emphasis on intrinsic organizing capacity in the brain of the individual, right? Emphasize on dynamic interaction of the elements in the entire field, right? Uh, what's the time? 9:50. So in your module also, these principles of Gestalt theory is described. So later, leisurely read those areas and uh, for your further knowledge, further practice, it will be useful for you, right? So some principles of Gestalt theory. Uh, First one is law of similarity, right? Uh, this
Excuse me,
makes, yes.
Gestalt theory of learning means
Mm,
you say that it's considering as a whole, right?
yeah. Mm.
Whole mean you mean by covering the behaviorism, constructivism, covering all those theories. It is form. Is that
No,
the
no, not
thing you are?
theories. No, no, no. They are separate ideas, right? Uh,
Gestalt.
Ges-
Could you say something about Gestalt theory?
Gestalt theory actually, the people who describe or who have introduced this theory, especially Max Wertheimer, uh, he says that a whole thing, taking the whole thing, is greater than taking it as parts. Right now, as an example, uh, a flower, right? It is just not a total of petals and other parts of the flower and color and honey and fragrance, right? So uh, the total of the part is not equal to the whole now. Uh, Now, flower, when you look at it, you take it as a whole thing. Now, if it is separated into different parts, there are several petals, right? And there's a stem to it and some leaves near the flower, and there's a color for that, and there's honey um, stored inside it, and then there's a fragrance, right? Then those parts are now, see, they are different from, but flower is a one unit, the whole thing. Like that, uh, they say that for everything. Now we'll see how this Gestalt theory uh, contributes for educational significance in the next slide. Then you will understand it better. Now, the idea of Gestalt theory is that we have to look at things as a whole, not as parts of it, right? Uh, Learning, according to Gestalt theory, learning is the organization and reorganization of behavior. Organization and reorganization of behavior that comes from interaction of uh, organism, or that is people or students, and its environment. Right? Learning happens by organizing and reorganizing behavior of the child. That's how learning takes place, they say. Right? It's a whole thing. Not like now, let's say, uh, let's say now we teach him English,
Oh,
right? Yes.
yeah, proceed, madam.
Oh,
You are still struggling to explain that. Okay, right.
yeah,
Proceed.
yeah. It's not easy to explain in such a small time. That's why. Now you got the idea. Now we in Gestalt theory,
Yeah,
we
to some extent, but actually, I didn't swallow the whole weight of the food,
uh-huh.
but to some extent, you mean by
Right, good.
the Gestalt theory is actually the whole thing means that uh, in the process of teaching and learning, we have
Mm,
to do almost all the things, especially the organization and reorganization of behavior and the other
mm,
pattern and
mm.
observing the children. All these things are included in this
In
in the principle of Gestalt theory.
Gestalt theory, yes. Now when you
Yeah,
come to
you mean
this,
by that? Am I right? I don't know.
no,
As I have
no, what you
understood.
got is correct to a
Yeah,
certain
okay, because
extent.
this is how I absorb the things what you have told me actually, all right?
Ah, right, good. That's good. So now look at this slide. I think you will be able to get a better idea. So the educational significance of Gestalt theory. Now, Gestalt theory, it's a psychological school of thought, right? Mm, It's not merely about education only. That's
I mean
psychological.
by uh, what I thought actually deeply and vastly is mean the psychologist Gestalt theory. What is his name actually, madam? What's
Gestalt
the name of
theory,
this?
the
Yeah,
person
okay,
who introduced this thing,
yeah,
that's a combination of psychologists have introduced
okay,
this
right,
theory.
right,
Max
okay, oh,
Berderma is the pioneer, right?
oh, right,
Uh,
okay. Anyway, I think he tries his level best to escape from all other theories, especially. Then he is going to explain as a whole thing because when he says about the whole thing means that nobody can find mistakes or fault as a one thing because it includes almost all the thing in the process of
mm,
teaching and learning. So there he tries to escape right from all this theory. That's why he himself has created Gestalt theory of learning, right?
um, yes, kind of a idea is there, right? Now, just think about this. All these theories or the schools of thought about psychology, that is their main concern is about psychology. We have, I mean, when they describe these theories, they didn't. Um, uh, Educational psychology is just a part of their uh, theory, right? We are concerned about that part only. Do you get that? They didn't talk about only about education or only about children or only about learning, teaching learning process. We educationists, we later from these theories, we took out the part that is essential for us. Like that, other counselors and psychiatrists, they have taken areas which are concerned with them, with their professions from the theory. Do you get that? Right? So, this is the educational significance of Gestalt theory, how it contributed for education section. Right? Uh, Gestalt psychology contribution to education lies in its concepts of the organization of stimuli and insight. Right? It's through the uh, Gestalt psychologists, educators to conceive the problem of learning in more comprehensive terms. Mm. According to them, they say that learning happens by organizing and reorganizing of behavior, right? So, uh, Gestalt School emphasizes the importance of presenting the subject matter as a whole in the class so as to make learning more meaningful, right? They are used in construction of curriculum, organization of syllabus, scheme of studies, work plan, like that. These theories are implemented in these areas of education. So, holistic method of teaching, holistic evaluation, insight learning, comprehensive education programs draw their inspiration from Gestalt theory. So, uh, now look at this holistic evaluation right now. We evaluate as to help you all to understand this thing, right? Now we evaluate children in different using different methodology. Formative evaluation and summative evaluation are the two main area we use usually. Formative evaluation is something we do during the teaching learning process, and summative evaluation is done at the end of a certain time period, at the end of the term or at the end of the uh, teaching of the whole curriculum. Right now, as an example, you take the O-level examination, right? We teach them the curriculum, secondary curriculum from grade 6 to grade 11, and we evaluate the children as a whole at the end of that secondary curriculum from using the GCE O-level examination, right? Until then, they are not nationally, they are not evaluated at the national level. Do you get that? Right? Even teaching is
It means summit. You mean at the end of the term,
summative.
as yeah,
Hmm.
it is it is considered as the national level, and that would be the last final examination of theirs. So that is as a summative evaluation.
Yeah. Summative
Oh,
evaluation is usually done at the end of a certain time period. Term
yeah.
tests are also summative evaluation. It's a whole. The what we
I
taught during the whole
the
term is evaluated.
term test can be considered as a summative evaluation.
Yeah, yeah. Now,
Because
formative is the other method. Formative evaluations are done during the teaching learning process. You suddenly give them, ask them some questions to evaluate their knowledge, right? You suddenly give them small written uh, some paragraph and ask them to write answers to that paragraph. Once you, while you are working in the classroom, right? Like unit tests, right? Suddenly you just to evaluate them on the spot, you give formative type of evaluations, right? That's a totally different topic. I just wanted to make you understand.
I
That's why
have
I told.
learned that, madam. I have
Huh,
learned that
yeah.
because
And for
it is.
measurements, you must have. Hmm.
Yeah, I have learned because slightly I forgot. It came to my memory, but by the time you. Okay,
Hmm.
what do you say next one? Formative, right?
Formative and summative.
Formative. Then and there. I mean by then and there, right? The students is
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
tested there.
yeah. Hmm.
Then
Hmm.
and there,
Hmm.
right?
Correct. Right. Then Gestalt school emphasizes the importance of motivation and proposing any learning. So motivation in any scheme of learning can be uh, developed through Gestalt school of learning, right? So we discussed about six uh, psychological schools of thought and how these different schools of thought are, or their theories are used in education process, right? Uh, this summary, actually, we don't have to read it because that is given in your note also in page 20 and 21. Later, when you have time, you can read what we did uh, in today's lesson is being summarized here.
Is it in LMS, right?
Yes, it's there in Indian LMS. And some questions and exercises for your
Madam,
further.
excuse me, if we take printout, it costs a lot, but actually, uh, for each and every subjects, we can't take printout. We have to go through and take short notes, right? Because we have a hell of, umpteen number of slides. So if it is less amount or less number of notes, then it is we find it easy. I find it easy to take printout, but so we have to go through the notes
There's a
and take
nice
down.
module prepared for this, I think. In your LMS, it must be available, I think. Then if you can get even the soft copy is enough of it. If you can read it from your uh, laptop or smart device, something, even that will be enough, I think. Right? For your further knowledge, take a photograph of this slide even, and you can, if you can write answers to these questions, that will help you all to get ready for your examinations, right? Because usually these type of questions and can be asked for the examinations also from what we have learned yesterday and today. Short answer questions and some long answer, that is essay type questions, right? So the definitions of educational psychology, yesterday we discussed some of them, and Crow and Crow define educational psychology. We did that yesterday. And 4 stages classified by educational psychology during the development of human brain. Short answers. When you go through the lessons, you'll be able to find them. Important methods and techniques of collecting data. Educational psychology. Then essay type questions. Distinguish between psychology and educational psychology. The difference between those two terms, yesterday we discussed it. And the nature and scope of educational psychology also we discussed yesterday in detail. And problem of education in the,
Scope means we have a limit, right? We have a
the
limit.
limitations. Yeah,
We can't
yesterday
go beyond the limit because
beyond that limit.
when we making the students in the rightest path, there we have a restriction. So if
Yes.
we want,
Yes.
if we want to go further, then we have to. It's our duty to meet the parent of the child, and
Mm.
with them we have to guide, and we have to do our. We have to do the best of for the children with the
Yes.
support of the parent. Is it so?
Yes, kind of that.
Uh,
Scope of educational psychology, yesterday we discussed, right? Uh, there we have to identify our learner. Who is our learner, right? Yesterday we discussed all these things. We have to
who,
identify the
why?
learner and the education system, how we are going to teach them, right? Uh, the learning process and the learning situation. Learner, the learning process, and the learning situation. When you identify those areas, then that is the scope of educational psychology. You can't go beyond that. Then describe, then a problem of education in the solution of which educational psychology can be helped. And some of these, just for example, these essay type questions, then you can, if you can find answers for them, that will be helpful for you all. Right. Then today the main area we discussed in our lesson was the schools of psychology and their contribution to education. In that, we discussed about the experimental psychology and then functionalism and behaviorism and psychoanalysis school and then constructivism and finally the Gestalt theory. Those are the 6 things, 6 main areas we discussed today. So tomorrow also, I think from 7:30 to 9:30, we have the third session. There, I hope to discuss about next topic that is uh, growth and development of children. That's something, I mean, the relationship between psychology and biology actually. The growth and development of children will be the topic we'll be discussing tomorrow. So thank you very much for participating actively in today's lesson. I really appreciate when you ask questions and whenever you need to clarify things, you are please feel free to ask. Right? Then let's wind up the session for today and good night and thank you for participating.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam.
Thank you very much.
Ma'am.
Night.
Thank you,
Good
ma'am.
night.
Good night, ma'am. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
ma'am.
Good night.